In this video, I'll demonstrate how to manage data with a data manager application that comes in the Begonia framework, and also how to perform batch operations in this tool for long-running processing operations. We're going to start by starting the software using dataman.start. And to run this command, you need to perform the steps in the installation video. Here we go. So once you load the data manager, you're presented with this view. It contains a multitude of buttons here that we'll get back to in later videos, but right now there is no data loaded. The data manager is here to allow you to perform steps on multiple sets of data, such as, let's say you have 100 recordings for your project and you need to perform some manual and some automatic steps on that data. So these steps you can add to the data manager yourself. And when you add new steps, or what we call actions, to Data Manager, you can add them as menu options or buttons on the side here. So the Data Manager is just one instance of what we call the data location editor. And if you want to create a piece of software just like this, particularly tailored for your project with custom buttons and custom operations, you can do that. And I'm going to refer to the documentation where you can look up the data location editor. So right now we're going to add some data into this session. Every time you start a data manager, it creates a new session. And a session is essentially a list of data that you are working on. So we're going to go now and choose File, Add Directory. And in my data directory here, I have 6 recordings, 2 photon recordings from a wake mouse running on a running wheel inside a Bruker 2 photon microscope. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add this entire directory. So if I'm not going to choose one of these subdirectories, I'm just going to pick the entire directory and choose select folder. So what Begonia does now is that it looks for data in the stat folder structure and finds it for you. You can see that it has found 6 T-series. And if I select these, you can see that it says 6 times Begonia scan type H5 old and then something else. And this is the reason it says old here is because this is a legacy data format. So you can see that it has found a specific type of scans, and it has loaded that into the editor. If I want to continue working on this list the next time I use it, I can go File, Save Session, and save this session. I'm going to go to the desktop, and it auto-generates a name for me here, so I don't need to specifically name it, so I'm just going to use what it suggested. If I now go out of the data manager, and then start another one by doing dataman.start like before, I can reload that session by going File and choosing the session name here in the list of the last few sessions that I have been working on. I can also choose Reopen Last or specifically select it using Load Session. I'm going to choose Reopen Last now because I find that really convenient. If you have a selection, so for instance you want everything except this one that's tagged bad one, you can make a selection like this and go File, New Session from Selection. And then it will create a new session for you in a new data manager that does not contain the data that was not selected. The last thing that is important to know when working on the data manager is that all the buttons and the menus are annotated by these superscript B's and sometimes M's. Sometimes it's also a B and an M together, like here, process by template. So what these little selections mean, what these little superscripts mean is basically that if it's an M, it means that all the things you have selected will go into a single operation. However, if the selected thing has a B, like it has here, it means that all the things you have selected will go into a batch operation, and you need to start that batch operation before anything happens. I'm going to stabilize this data. They are from a mouse brain of a running mouse, and they have motion artifacts. So I'm going to select all the data. I'm going to choose Tools and configure Stabilization. We get this little norm core configuration dialog window here. And because it said M in the menu option, it means that the selections and things that we do here will apply to all these T-series. We're just going to go with the default options. Then the next step is to actually perform the stabilization of this data, and that is a long-running operation. So we're going to go Tools, Stabilize, and you can see now that it opened this action queue, and in the action queue you can see pending actions. So nothing has happened yet. In order to start this batch operation, I'm going to click Do Actions, and it's going to start on the first action. So right now it's running the first batch operation here, and that's going to take a long time. Sometimes something goes wrong during these operations, and in those cases you'll get an error message here. If you have an error message on an item like this, you can just rethrow and you'll get the exception in the command line in MATLAB, and you can see exactly what line it broke on and exactly what the error was. Okay, so this concludes the video on the data manager. We'll get back to the actual how do you filter data in the next video.